Morning, everybody. I'm Elise. There's another truth here on YouTube. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I would like to issue a little content warning before we proceed. While I will not be saying anything in great detail and nothing that seems overtly triggering, I am going to bring up mental health, personality disorders, and so on. So if these topics are particularly disturbing to you or you feel triggered, please, by all means, I do invite you to come back at another time that you feel more comfortable in staying and find something else that is more healing or educative. I won't take offense. Ongoing consent is a fundamental part of this channel, and we welcome you back at any time. That said, I'm going to begin the video. Today I wanted to talk or to touch upon something that I have seen, that I've just learned about, that has always been there in terms of a feature of borderline personality disorder, something that I am working through myself. Now, borderline personality disorder, which is basically emotional dysregulation, does have its roots in trauma, being gaslit, being abused, and so on. And I definitely have experienced all of that in my life. I do think that I had a personality disorder much younger than I previously thought. I did have some emotional problems as a child, which may not have necessarily stemmed from abuse, but it certainly has developed from early childhood deprivation. Then when the other stuff happened, then it was all kind of set in stone not set in stone for me, but it was enough for me to develop some of the symptoms that I have. So there's a term called splitting. And splitting is, I will crudely describe it as experiencing that black and white thinking that we have. It's either or. There can't be anything in the middle. Now, I'm speaking as somebody from the perspective as a layperson, but a person who has experienced borderline personality disorder, who is still grappling with symptoms of a borderline personality disorder, and through my own observations and so on. I'm not a professional in this field, but I do have a right to challenge labels. It is my responsibility as a person participating in society to challenge labels and also challenge myself to stop using labels to describe myself. Now, BPD is a label, but for me, I see it as a point of reference to some of the things that I'm going through. It's emotional dysregulation. There was an origin of that. I think I know what contributed to that. I've talked about that. I don't need to talk about it in great detail in this video. But I disagree with the notion of splitting. I've never heard of that in the course of my own therapy. My psychologist is very careful with using labels around me. She doesn't want me to feel like my mental illnesses are totally who I am. She has always done her therapy in a way that is supportive of my whole identity, my whole person. And if that's not an integrative therapy, I don't know what is. So the term splitting describes that. Now, it's true. I have black and white thinking. I still do. I still do. But the reason why I hung on to absolutes or to that black and white thinking is because I needed some form of stability, because I was never told everything was going to be okay. I was never shown that I'm okay or I will be okay or we'll get through this together. Everything was one crisis after another. And there was a time in my adolescence when I was receiving treatment that every time someone told me it was going to be okay, or that someone was caring about me, I started going into a panic attack. And I'm sorry, I'm just reconnecting to some memories. But that's exactly that's what happened. I would break down and I couldn't understand why. But it's because I really wasn't shown that that was even an okay thing, or that I didn't even deserve it. So I would hang on to these absolutes thinking, and in these absolutes, it's either this way or that way, this way or that way. And if someone does this, I have to get rid of them. There's no healthy way of discerning what's a bad relationship and what's a good relationship and what's an in-between relationship and what the limits are to these relationships. I didn't learn that. I didn't learn that because I wasn't taught that in a kind way. I wasn't taught to handle my emotions in a positive way. I didn't know whether I was coming or going half the time. I, you know, I'm not against, I'm not saying that splitting is necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that splitting doesn't happen for other people with BPD or borderline personality disorder. I'm speaking from my own perspectives, from my own experiences, because people can say whatever it is. They may feel like it's splitting. For me, I don't think that was ever the case. I think because I am a human being with a full range of emotions, a full range of perspectives, a full range of things, a natural curiosity about life. Because I there's there is this weird dichotomy with me. And I say it's weird for me because I can't really process it. But like, I do have superior intellect. That doesn't, I'm not genius. I am not genius. I was an average student in school. I'm surprised I didn't fail school. I didn't have like behavior problems in school. I wish I did, because I would have called attention to something that was going on. I was overly sensitive and cried a lot because that's how I expressed myself. I didn't know how to deal with deprivation and deal with all of this stimuli in school. Had I acted out in school, I would have drawn more attention to what I was receiving at home. I would have gotten better services, I think. But of course, I'm not going to think that way as a kid. So I kind of coasted through. It's how I survived things. And then it just kind of keeping quiet, keeping things to myself. And but I didn't learn very much because I was so I was thinking about, I was anxious all the time. I was scared of school. I didn't want to be there. So I kind of like zoned out, and I would daydream a lot. Now daydreaming is great. It helps to, um, for me, it helped to follow some of my dreams. But I did it so much that I'd be in a total fantasy world and I wouldn't want to do anything else because I was so afraid of the outside world. That carried well into my adulthood. I wouldn't call that splitting. I would call that trying to adapt. So, but as an adult, it was either or. I had to deal with that because I needed anchoring in my life. I needed to anchor myself to something solid because I always felt like I was floating away. Even though I was fantastical in my thinking, I needed stability. I desperately needed stability. So holding on to those values to keep me grounded or anchored in the sea of emotion. I should say the anchored in the sea of emotions. That's how I turn black and white. And that's how it's hard because even when I went back to school last year or the year before, graduated last year, it was really hard to work through my emotional stuff when I was studying. But I did very well. I mean, I did my level best and I did my very best work because, some of that visualization and daydreaming and helping myself to see and do things a different way was always present. It's just the actual doing of it and working with other people, and that's how one would develop themselves, right? Now, I'm not a person who understands human development too much. I'm not educated in that. But I know that it was really hard. So I have this uneven balance. Like I have this superior intellect. Even though I started off pretty average, as I dealt with my emotional stuff, my intellectual capability became stronger, but my emotional development is still underdeveloped. And it's hard because, like, you can't have too much of a reasonable mind. You have to react to things, in my opinion. And it's not being ableist because not everybody can do that. I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you if you if you don't have the emotional, or you can't seem to have that emotional capability. That's fine. I'm just saying for my case, because my mental health challenges is based on my emotional dysregulation. Okay. But for me, like, I personally have to find a balance between having a good, strong intellectual foundation to be able to navigate through life and make better choices, and that emotional intelligence to be able to to be able to work with that, to say, okay, this is not a good idea. This is why. Think about this. Or having flexibility, being flexible and nimble. I mean, it's so difficult. For me, it's certainly because of my trauma and what I learned and what I didn't learn that was helpful, and dealing with these absolutes to hold on because of anxiety. This really does connect with, not connect in terms of symptoms, let's say, but there are other cognitive challenges. There are other cognitive challenges that where it overlaps. Okay, so like for BPD, some of our stuff overlaps, like with NPD and stuff like that. So some people, I've been called a narcissist so many times, so many times. And diagnostically, I don't have NPD, even though some of my symptoms might be similar to that of a person with narcissistic personality disorder. I'm not here to shame those people in this video. That's not what I'm doing in this video. I'm just saying that, some things overlap. There are similarities because it's all brought up with probably some level of deprivation, and not everybody reacts to the same type of stimuli in the same way or the same type of trauma. Some people might find things more traumatic than others. There is a level of flexibility in my thinking because I know that the world isn't always the way that I expect it to be all the time. I expect it to be a certain way, a narrow way, emotionally, but intellectually, I know it's not possible. I have a great curiosity for things, but oftentimes I find myself withholding myself because because of my phobias and my superstitions about things with time and patterns. And yeah, if there's an established pattern, but I take um, pattern patterns too seriously. I'm not seeing the whole picture. I'm always saying, well, this happened before, so this is going to happen again. You know, um, that's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily true. It's not my job to try to figure people out too much. It's just my job to ensure that I'm navigating my own life in a way that's not disruptive in a bad way to anybody else or myself. That doesn't mean I'm going to be a Miss Goody Two Shoes. Doesn't mean that I'm going to be perfect. I am going to piss off people. I piss off people all the time. Okay. I am angry and frustrated. Social injustice disgusts me. I react. I have a visceral reaction to that, to the point where I'm ready to tear shit down. I'm so angry. I'm so angry, but I don't. I mean, obviously, um, I don't cross that line, but I've alienated people because of it. But what am I going to do? Am I going to lie? Am I going to lie and say I'm not that way? I'm not going to mask myself any longer. There's no point. There are things that the world doesn't need to know. There are things in my life that are private. I don't show 365 degrees of my life to this platform or to anywhere else. I may say a lot of things about myself, but no one really knows what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, or anything. And no one's even asked me, what are your interests? Which is pretty sad, but that's okay. I do my own thing, and that's okay. So yeah, I always wondered that, like, people wonder, like, even me, to some, I've done this, but it's like when people start assuming things about people, but they never ask them about that person's interests. They never ask them why every every Tuesday they wear blue. I mean, the other person can say, well, it's none of your business. Or the other person can say, yeah, I'm honoring my grandfather this way. It's like, you, I hate to go back to the YouTube thing, but it's like, it's YouTube it magnifies this noise that doesn't need to be magnified. And a lot of things get overlooked and stuff, but I digress. That's for another video. So I don't agree with the label of splitting. I don't think how is it possible to label us in that way? We have a full range of emotions. Obviously, we're emotional people. We're trying to find stability. We think finding stability in other people is going to help us somehow when we're rejected by people. I can't tell you how many times in the last few months that I've had countless perceived rejections. People aren't answering my calls to even do volunteer work. Volunteer work. I have time. I have the energy. I have the intelligence. I have the stability to be a reliable member of a team. I would just start small, start with a few hours a week, and then work my way up to prove. Listen, there isn't anything more rewarding than to prove oneself and to do that a small amount of time at a time, because if I jump into it, I could lose interest or burn out. It's better I develop a tolerance, but not everybody wants someone with mental illness working for them. They don't want someone my age. It depends on what they want, what they need, and that is something we have to work with when we're dealing with stuff like this. Um, I think there is a level of a certain type of discrimination in it, but at the same time, it's a there are a lot of number of factors. It really doesn't have to do with me personally, or maybe people are afraid to say something to me. I don't know, but I can't take it as a personal assault all the time, because then I'll feel bad about myself, and when I do that, when I start indulging in self-deprecation and self-hate and worthlessness, it zaps the bloody energy out of me, and I definitely won't be able to do anything. And maybe doing that prevents me from doing it. I'm so scared. Believe me, I'm scared. I just took a break from asking so much right now, because I need to rework my game a little bit. And it's not a game for me. I'm just saying, like, up my game, learning more about how to approach nonprofits. Nonprofits are very strapped for time, staff, things like that. But I'm here. Maybe it's because I'm old. Maybe it's because I'm overweight. Maybe it's because I'm mentally ill. But these things aren't going to stop me from doing volunteer work, free work. And it's not free work, it's rewarding. It's giving back to my community that's been overall good to me. Even though I complain about my community a lot, my community's also been good in other ways. I want to give back. Maybe it's not this community that needs me, and maybe I have to branch out more. But I'm willing to do it. But it's okay. Just because I'm willing to do it doesn't mean that someone else is willing to take me on. They may find someone else who's better for the job. So I can't take it as a personal assault. But man, was I dealing with it. Believe me, in the old days, I would have said, screw this, I'm not doing it anymore. I've had enough. So where's the stability in my thinking with this? Is to keep trying. Now tell me how that's splitting. How is that splitting? Yeah, in the olden days, I would have given up. Okay, they don't like me because of this and that. Screw them, I'm not going to recommend them. Or screw that, I'm not going to do that. Being a total Karen about it. Even that wasn't being black and white and stuff. That was feeling hardcore rejection. It may not have been, but it felt like it. It felt like it. That doesn't mean, and I could have gone home and cried and felt bad about myself and thinking I was a piece of crap and worthless and unworthy of it, and then feeling like, okay, I can do this again. Well, of course I can do it again. That's life. What am I supposed to do? Stay in that, I've got to keep trying. That's not splitting. And I'm not saying that people don't experience splitting. I just don't like the label. I don't like the way that it's described, and it's like painted with a broad brush. But people with borderline personality disorder have a range of emotions. They can have a range of emotions about one thing in one day. But to me, that's human nature. It's just the level of emotion that we reach for. It's when it becomes disruptive to our thinking in life. And as I described, a lot of those emotional overboils, I would say, or emotional implosions were very detrimental to my health. And I think in the long run, it's contributing to this little health hiccup I'm having now, on top of everything else. And I wouldn't be surprised, because I was always under a constant state of stress. Now, what I'm going through is not a train smash yet. So I just said, okay, the alarm bells went off in my head, went to the doctor. I said, okay, we need to take care of this now. I've let this go for too long. Something's going on. I just want to treat it and do the best that I can, because my body's going to fail. I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 in a few months. My physicality is a little on decline, although I do feel a lot better than I have ever in my life, even with things going on. And I definitely have more energy now, and I'm dealing with rejection a little bit more. But and in time, my emotional intelligence will match my um, intellectual level. Eventually, I'll grow up a little bit more in time that I practice these things, and it does get me angry when people have a sense of entitlement, and I don't think that wanting to be a part of the community and giving back is a sense of entitlement. Yeah, demanding a job like that, maybe, but I don't feel entitled to people's space. I don't feel entitled to um, be a part of something where I'm not a good fit. I don't know what a good fit is. If I were a manager, I could make those decisions. I would try to find room for everybody. That's how I would approach my jobs before managing people, is that there's room for everybody at the table. Because there's no point in having one kind of person, in a row of 20 people doing community service or work for a diverse group of people, and maybe I mean, who knows, but I wish I could prove myself, but I can't do it unless someone welcomes me in their spot. But if it's a community spot, everybody should be a part of that, even middle-aged old women like myself, with mental illness. I offer a different perspective. But like I said, people do not have to share my space. There are spaces in which I don't belong or I'm not a good fit for. And that's not up for me at the end to decide. What's up to me to do is to find a space where I am welcomed, where my services are required or needed, I should say. So yeah, that's not splitting. That isn't splitting. Even feeling rejected and angry, it's not feeling entitled. It's not splitting. It's just having a whole range of emotions about a certain situation and relying on those absolutes. It's empty because nothing is absolute. So when I started relying less on that maladaptive behavior, I can handle my new health hiccup a little better, and I'm going to have a new kind of lifestyle that is really testing my ability to take care of myself in a good way for the better. So, yeah, that's my idea on splitting. I would be interested in thinking, I'd be interested in knowing what you think about splitting. And if you're somebody with borderline personality disorder, how you view that and if you think you split or not. But only share what you're comfortable sharing, and don't go into great detail because your privacy is your right to have.